Good morning, everyone. Today is Monday, September the 20th, 2021. And today I'm going to talk about dividend income. So this was actually a question that was asked of me from a friend, just as sort of advice suggestion, because I'm not a advisor as such. So this friend of mine asked how he could come up with about 60,000 per year without working, but with a base of capital. So I thought about it, and I said, well, you could have a well, actually, before I continue, let me just say, I discovered a very good thing from my kids. If you listen to my videos at 1.25 or faster speed, depending on your attention span, but if you do 1.25x my speed, I become a lot more tolerable to listen to because I speak so slowly, and I think slowly and articulate slowly. So anyways, with that out of the way, so I thought about it, and I said, well, if you take, say, 20% taxes or property taxes, etc., factor that in and buffer that 60K to like 90K. If you take a $1 million base of investment and you put it like in a carefully selected basket of high dividend, like really high dividend stocks, then you could make that without working, basically, and your tax rate is also lower because dividend income is taxed a lot lower than earned income tax. And he mentioned, hey, why don't you should have probably suggested this sort of thing to that, for that 10-year-old's question about financial freedom, that video that I made, I think, sometime last week. And I thought about that too, and I feel like with younger people, dividend companies paying high dividends don't generally grow at as high a rate or have as high a growth potential and volatility like some other companies do. And that's, I guess, the whole debate between growth versus value stocks. This is not financial advice. These are just certain stocks that I personally have looked into that have really low PE ratios, price to earnings ratios, and have actually pretty high dividends. The one caveat I'll make is if you're looking at a company like individual stocks, not like VDADX, which is Vanguard's high dividend fund or whatever, ETF or something. No, it's a fund. It's not an ETF. But if you're picking individual stocks, you are looking at the risk of what if that whole company goes bust. And so I will say that you should look at the financial statements carefully. You should make sure that that they have enough capital, that their balance sheet is really healthy, that they don't have too much debt, and that you should really study their stuff. And I've, of course, in my finance MBA education, I have studied how to analyze financial statements, and so that's why that comes kind of naturally for me, and it's something I'm trained to do. Nevertheless, it's these days with the kind of information we have, it's quite easy to look up how to study a financial statement and do that yourself. I would not recommend like going to a financial advisor and putting your life and in their hands, so to speak, because again, I think on principle I'm all about taking agency for your own life and being as self-sufficient as you possibly can. That does not mean not asking for the advice and suggestions from experts, but always retain that agency to make your own decisions for yourself. All right, so I looked up certain financial statements and stuff, and the one thing I would say is make sure that whatever company that you're investing in has a healthy balance sheet, and from a stock kind of movement perspective, try to find one that's not kind of going steadily down, but up and down swings are okay, because here's one interesting thing about dividends you may or may not know, that it's indicated as a percentage. If you look it up in like some sort of app like a Robinhood or whatever, you'll see the PE ratio, and then immediately below that you will see the dividend payout. But that percentage, it changes with the stock price. As in, if the stock price goes down, then your dividend percentage goes up, because it's a fixed dollar amount that is being paid out per share. And so when the stock price goes down a little bit, it looks like the PE ratio, or not the PE ratio, the dividend ratio is, the dividend percentage is high, relatively speaking. But that's because they're committing to a certain dollar amount per share. And some stocks actually that are the highest or pretty high paying stocks with relatively kind of stable stock price performance are interestingly some of the tobacco kind of stocks. And I'll share this anecdote. It's kind of, it's funny, but it's kind of sad funny. No, it's actually not at all funny. It's sad, but it's useful information. How I found out about these particular stocks, like the two that I in particular are like BTI and MO. The companies are like British Tobacco, and MO is Altria or something. Anyways, I'm not docking on these stocks or anything. I'm just sharing how I discovered that these two pay such good dividends. I'm a student of psychology. I'm a doctoral student, and I was doing some work on schizophrenia and homelessness, and studying that, the sort of vicious cycle of homelessness, addiction, and schizophrenia. And I was writing a paper on it like a couple terms ago at school. And my professor/advisor told me, hey, the part on addiction is fine, but you could, there's some really low-hanging fruit that you've not looked at, which is tobacco addiction in the homeless community. And I was like, okay, let me look into this more, because that was obviously like feedback, more stuff that I can look into. And so I began to look into it, and apparently these are some things that I found borne out by research. And if you do have a question about like who that researcher was, what year the publication was, etc., just ask me in the comments, and I will find it and I will send it to you. So 1/3, so people who are on public subsidy and among the homeless population, or the houseless population as we say in these days, 1/3 of their income is spent on tobacco. I mean, 1/3 of, like, if a person usually like in a household budget or whatever, you spend 1/3 of your income on housing related costs, whether that's rent, mortgage, whatever, plus property taxes. But to just spend that 1/3 on cigarettes, so then, and by the way, this was another interesting fact. So smoking, people who smoke and are living on the streets without stable income and without stable housing, they are I'm forgetting the exact stat, but they're higher. They're apt to die of heart attacks and other like smoking related issues at a much higher rate than other people, even higher than other people with mental illnesses. And that's another interesting and sad thing. And now here's the kicker. The healthcare system classifies people who use the medical system a lot. They classify them as high utilizers. I think that's a really nasty word, by the way, high utilizer. I would say, they need more care. They're not high utilizers. But because, again, in the healthcare system also is viewed as a very sort of profit-driven, they're very concerned about their own margins and about making more profit relative to what they, or not profit, because I guess many of them are non-profit, but they care about whether people use their whole premium or don't. And so they don't like high utilizers, and they find that people who smoke are high utilizers. And so they try to limit or get people to reduce smoking, but with these really, I think, ineffectual programs, such as a three-session intervention to reduce smoking. I mean, that's ridiculous, first of all. And of course, these, many of these things have a very high failure rate. Well, duh, because how are you going to get somebody who smokes to stop smoking in 3 sessions? I mean, if it were that easy, don't you think they would have stopped by now? But yeah. Anyways, so I, and looking at all this, about smoking being really hard to treat, being really hard to quit, and I'm sure many people who do smoke or have smoked will tell you how many times they've so-called fallen off the wagon. I'm Indian, so V's and W's. Wagon. How many times they fall off the wagon? Never mind, forget the wagon. How many times they have gone back to smoking? It's not something that's easy to quit. So then, me being the former finance person, I was like, well, let's see what these people's margins are. Well, because the technology in smoking hasn't changed much. And so I looked it up and I found these 2 stocks and they're paying 8% dividends. Okay, 8% dividend with a relatively stable stock price. Now, one day the stock price will be 36, one day it'll be 38. I'm talking about British Tobacco, BTI, and MO, the Altria one, which makes, I don't know what cigarette they make, but anyways. Their stock will trade somewhere between 48 and 51. So it's not Tesla. Nobody's going to the moon, and it's not MicroStrategy. One day it's $400, and the other day it's $700, and the other day it's $1,000. So no massive volatility / gains to be made. It's not Bitcoin certainly, but it's a very very normal kind of price fluctuation of stock. But an 8% dividend, I'm like, my goodness, just think about that, okay? You put in 100K into that, if you have 100K, or like on a self-managed IRA or a self-managed 401K, or your own brokerage account, if you have 100K, 8K, if you have $1 million, $80,000 to hold, But I mean, of course, again, disclaimer, not financial advice, and I'm not saying go put all your eggs in this one basket. There are many other, high dividend paying stocks. So, anyways, that was the not funny, but again interesting way in which I learned about tobacco dividend paying stocks. Of course, there are others too, but I personally like. I like Rio, and again, like, not financial advice. Or as one of these YouTubers who I really like says, not financial advice, you'll lose all your money. No, you won't lose all your money. Just don't listen to random people on YouTube, as they say. Yeah, I personally like this one called, what's it called? It's called Rio Tinto Mines. I like them because they're in Australia, and it's a mine, and they pay like 5 or 6% or 7% maybe dividend. So that's pretty good as well. And yeah, so those are some of the suggestions I have on how to earn more passive income via dividends. And I hope this was useful to you, and I hope it gave you some ideas. As always do your own research. Look up at minimum PE ratios, because that kind of tells you how undervalued a stock is. Look up this website called tradingview.com. They have charts. You can put a really long range chart and see sort of where the overall trend is of a certain stock or security or equity. And so I hope this was useful, and take care and have a good week, everyone. Bye.